Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Kylie.
Hello.
Hello.
I am here with Jennifer Jeffcoat of Awaken Method. Jennifer is wearing a turtleneck with the painting behind her. And Kylie is with Alpine Village School in Northern
Yeah.
Idaho. And does not have a picture behind her. She's got a door. So I previously interviewed Jennifer Jeffcoat of Awaken Method. So I'm going to be very brief about her bio, but we're here today to talk about Jennifer's program and how Kylie has done the experiential facilitator training and then gone on and started her own school, implementing all of the learnings. And so I want to just kind of really quickly go through what Jennifer's curriculum is based around, which is the 7 developmental layers. And they are roughly, this is kind of like roughly the age range, but every child is different, obviously. So from about womb to 12 months, it's physical identity and self-preservation. From 6 months to 2 years, it's the emotional identity, self-gratification. From 18 months to about 4 years, ego identity and self-definition. 4 years to 7 years, social identity and self-acceptance. 7 years to about 12 years, creativity identity, self-expression. And then adolescence is the archetypal identity, self-reflection. And then from early adulthood on throughout life, it's the universal identity and self-knowledge. If any of this is so intriguing to you, jump on Jennifer's website, theawakenedmethod.com, and find out more. And also, Jennifer and I will be doing more extensive interviews that we will have behind our subscriber base. So that's upcoming. Jennifer, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a beautiful job, Belinda. Thank you.
Thank you. Kylie, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you got him.
Okay, great. I'm going to start with Kylie's bio. Alpine Village Farm is a small family-owned and operated organic farm located in beautiful North Idaho. For the last 3 years, they have been building, sweating, crying, more building, and setting up the infrastructure for what is now Alpine Village Farms and Alpine Village School. The road to get there felt impossible at times, but they are there now, and they have never been more committed to providing organic, healthy food and resources for their people. Did you want to add anything more to that, Kylie?
No, I like to make it as concise as possible. That's pretty much it. It was a long road to get here. We're here now, and we're really committed to spreading the word and doing workshops and interviews and stuff like this to just get the word out.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that. And most of the workshops that you're doing are going to be local at your location as opposed to online, or both?
No, right now the workshops are on site. We're actually in the process of filming just different medicine people who come through, so those can be available online. But the workshops that I'm involved in are on site and with Jennifer.
Perfect. Right. And you guys have one coming up.
We
So
do.
we'll talk about that soon. All right, Jennifer, do you want to describe a little bit about the experiential facilitator training and why have you developed it?
Why have I developed it? It's a big question. I think it goes into my life experience within the systems and feeling lack of autonomy, lack of expression, lack of curiosity. I feel that is the foundation of it all. And really understanding, I think it was Steiner's work that really opened up that first window, then the realm of pre and perinatal birth psychology, and Carl Jung's work, I think is kind of all encompassing. And how, when we, these technocratic systems that we live in, how it stifles the human experience. I think that's the foundation of why I have, dove in really deep after, well, my first daughter, my first child, but extensively after my son. And what does this all mean? And how can we move back into that rhythm of supporting and moving and growing in the relationship field with sovereignty, with autonomy, with curiosity. So I feel that's it.
That's beautiful. And the experiential facilitator training is it a year-long program or longer?
Well, typically we meet, there's 7 modules, and we meet about every 5 to 6 weeks for a full weekend. We are I hold them from a Friday afternoon all the way to a Sunday evening. And we meet about every 5 or 6 weeks, and we introduce a new module, which is a building block from the next, it's a comprehensive developmental process of moving through the layers.
And when they do it, it's very experiential, and you also leave the 5 to 6 weeks for them to integrate everything that they've learned, right?
Correct. Yeah. And the ideal is too that we try to meet in between, even if it's just online, to explore what we've been processing, finding what's happening. And, again, what is experiential? Experiential is truly, I give insight, or I give information. And how is that truly for yourself? There is no one way, there's no good or bad, right or wrong. It's just for the first time really moving out of the polarity or the pendulation of this good, bad, right and wrong, and just getting into this space within the body experience of what is this information, and being curious about it versus judging it. So, and that can be challenging for some people, because we're so used to having an algorithm of telling us what to do. And this can sometimes be a little fearful, and maybe not have enough, what I call dynamic, not just myself, called dynamic creative opposition, but this boundary space when you're giving so much space to explore.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a friend that is participating in one of your training courses now, and she was talking about how interesting that was to see how everybody is given agency over their own learning, and you kind of provide space for that. And that's sort of the way you describe it, just reminds me of when I was at Waldorf teacher training, and we'd be reading a Rudolf Steiner book, which is so hard to understand. And we would say, well, I think it means this. And then a friend would say, and I think it means this. And the teacher would look at us and be like, yeah. Uh-huh. So we're like, okay, get it. So, okay, it is exactly what we think it is. All right, thanks. All right, so Kylie,
Yeah.
you've taken the course. What were your biggest takeaways from the course? If you could even share, like a snapshot of what your takeaways were that basically inspired you to start your own experiential classroom.
Yeah, so I've taken quite a few of Jennifer's courses, and I'll definitely speak to what Jennifer was saying. In the beginning, you're just kind of busted wide open, and intuitively everything makes sense. You're like, oh my gosh, yes, it's all clicking. And then you have this cognitive dissonance of like, but this goes against everything that we were taught and shown. And then there's times where the autonomy feels threatening because there's not an answer, and we've been groomed in these systems where it's so polarized, where there's always an answer and it's very clear, it's black and white, it's good or bad. So there were definitely times in the program when that autonomy felt unsafe and threatening, just because then that meant it had to come from me. There was also times, even as a parent, when my child was in her program and she shared the story in training, shared the story in trainings before, where I looked at her and I was like, what do I do? And she's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, just give me an answer. Like I was actually triggered. I was like, why didn't she tell me what I was supposed to do? My child wasn't feeling good. I didn't know if I should keep her there. I'd take her home. She was detoxing. And just putting it right back on me, like, oh yeah, I have that authority and that autonomy to lean into this and see how to best support my child. But initially it was taken almost offensively, like, does she not care about me? She's a mother figure, why isn't she just telling me? So it was interesting to explore that. So my one takeaway from the programs, one of the main reasons I use Jennifer's work is because she's not selling you anything except your freedom. there's not a prescription of like, if you follow this, you're gonna get this result. It is so just, it opens this beautiful journey to find yourself, and where did you lose yourself, and how do you get back into yourself, and what do you want, and how are you going to get there. And I think that's it. It's the expansiveness of the program. You know, even through my parent education that my teachers do through my school, there's oftentimes they're like, okay, so what do we do to fix it? And it's like, cue the drum roll. I don't know. That you're going to, I will be here to facilitate and to offer support and insight and observations. But ultimately, this is your journey. This is your journey that you have with your child. So while I can be here as a support system, I don't know how to fix it. That all depends on what you're going to do with this, you know, unfoldment of how you want to move, and where you might be stuck, and how to unstick yourself. So I think that's like, that was my one takeaway, is that it's so much larger. There's so much space for growth and grace and learning and unlearning. Just being in that, I was like, wow, there's something so big in this work that I want to just continue to keep involving myself in, and taking. Anytime she hosted a training, I was there, and usually recruiting other people, like, you guys got to check this out. This is like next level. This is totally different than anything we've been taught. And, you know, I'm coming from the public school system. I mean, I was a child in the public school system, but I also taught for 10 years in the public school system. Okay. So initially I took her Awaken method training, and then I took the teacher and the parent one. And that was like, okay, we have some major work to do here, some reversing to do here, and how we're going to hold space for these kids and support the parents along the way.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you're describing how it is done with parents. I think it would be interesting to have an interview with you and one of your parents in your program, because I would imagine, because the parent is the authority over herself and her child at this point, and we're flailing, I would imagine that the classroom kind of looks a little bit disheveled, because there's that period where I don't know what I'm gonna do, and let me try to figure this out, and what do I do now?
I think a lot of my parents right now are in this space where it's they know what they don't want to do, and they're still figuring out what makes sense for them to do. So it's, how do I explain it? They're in this space now where things are just they're not reacting so fast. Answers are a little more drawn out. They're taking pauses. It's almost like the entire process in itself has slowed down, because you're like, oh, okay, let's see, where am I? Where is my child? Is there a real threat happening? What is some language I can recall? You know, do I need to ask Miss Kylie for some support? So it's interesting, whereas like it was really quick to correct behavior and fix it, and now everything just seems to be a lot slower in that process.
That is beautiful, because that's what's so needed. Because imagine how many things for children get cut off because the parent comes in to try and fix whatever they think is wrong. So if you allow that space, then I would imagine that plenty of kids work things out. And in that time that the parents trying to work themselves out, something else gets worked out anyways.
Yeah, you know, I think every generation wants to do it better than the last, but we're so focused on fitting in and being accepted that we're robbing them from their experiences all day, every day, just to secure our spot. We're good parents. We have respectful children. We have, you know, well-mannered children, that the children don't get the opportunity to learn these things. And then they're in their 30s and their 40s, and they're like, this is a lot harder than I feel like it should be, you know, because when it was their time to explore conflict and friendships and the ins and outs of life, those opportunities were usually taken from them. It was either a fix it was a punishment, it was a, nope, we're going to stop right there. That's enough. I don't want to hear it. So they truly don't, you know, the time that they're supposed to be learning this stuff, and it's supposed to be unpleasant and loud and undesirable, they're not getting that. And so then, you know, we have a culture of adults where that behavior can even look more undesirable because we just have more power with it, right? And this is this whole part of this school. And what I really learned from Jennifer is, so what if we give that agency back to the kids. Then what kind of teenagers are we going to be fostering? What kind of adults are we going to have in the world? You know, I don't
Yeah.
know. We're not there, but I'm assuming it's going to be a lot more fluid with people who know where to draw the line in the sand, how to articulate their boundaries and what they need, how to call on support, how to take care of themselves.
Mm. And how to tap into their own intuition
Yeah.
for answers. Jennifer, this is, Kylie School is not the first school that has run your program. You had your own program for a while out in California. I don't know how long it's been, but do you have any children that have come through your program that are now teenagers?
Not to the extent or the level that I have it, or I had it in California.
Okay.
I think the oldest kid probably is 12,
Yeah.
possibly getting into their teens, but it was truly implemented in the way it has been when Kylie came in and experienced it and the teacher training, I would say a good solid 8 years.
Okay. Okay. So it would be interesting to round back and see how a teenager feels about having grown up in that system and having that agency.
Yeah.
So, Kylie, your school is called Alpine Village School, and it's
Mhm.
run on your farm, which sells organic starts, chicken eggs, and your merchandise line, which has the tagline Farms Over Pharma.
Mhm.
Amazing. Everybody should be wearing that all day long. When I was looking over your website, there was something that popped out at me that I wanted to mention here. Your description of your school.
Mhm.
Our school is built upon responsive versus reactive parenting techniques. We focus on assisting parents in identifying and meeting the emotional and physical needs of their child to better understand their behavior. We release ourselves from the limiting belief that children need to learn certain materials by a certain age, and if they don't, they are behind. We
Yeah.
understand the unfoldment is different for each child and honor their process. I love that because that's how I feel too. And I wish people would really understand that your child's not behind. That's
Right.
an arbitrary system.
Yeah.
And just stop even referring to grade levels.
Mhm.
I always
Let's
explain
talk
it to
about
parents.
ages.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always explain to parents too, if the content standards had any science backing to it, we wouldn't have different content standards per state. I mean, the state content, it's all over the place, right? You can't compare Texas to California. You can't compare them because there's such a discrepancy and it's all politics. And if you're not in that system, you don't know. You don't know how curriculum is getting passed down and why are we using this book over this book. And unfortunately, like everything else, it's all politics. But if there was, a scientific reason or someone who studies child development or the brain, the standards would be across the board. And they're not. So even right, that kind of releases this anxiety from parents of like, okay, that's something they can grapple around. Like that makes sense, but shouldn't they be reading right now? But shouldn't they be doing this, right now by this age? And it's going back to what do you want for your child? What makes a successful citizen? And it's usually never comes down to academics. We have extremely smart people. We have billionaires in the world. We have creators in the world. There's so many things happening right now, but we're still sick. We're struggling more than ever. So, like, that system is not working anymore. Time to go back to the drawing board and what are they really designed to be learning right now? Can we make that a priority? And if we can, the other learning just unfolds. It's pretty interesting. We have 3 7-year-olds in the program, and almost all of them are reading with no formal instruction. And it's something that we talk about with the parents, they're just picking it up on their own time, but it's not something that we're pressing. It's not something that we're constantly testing and assessing, where now there's what is this beautiful rite of passage to learn how to read because your entire world opens up, is now something that's a chore and you're going to be assessed and measured and just let's go, let's read. They don't have that. And so look how it's unfolding right now. They're naturally picking it up when there's curiosity, when there's interest, when they're ready. But the relationship field that a lot of us struggle with in the adult realm, That is what we're focusing on now. We can see that very clearly in society that we're lacking the skills to just be functional adults who can communicate, who can set boundaries, who can advocate for themselves without fear of being, ousted from a community or a job or any organization.
Yeah, or any relationship.
Right.
The lack of ability to see the light in another human being and
Yeah.
really just kind of blaming all day long.
Right.
So a big part of your school is bringing the parents in and the
Mhm.
parent education.
Yeah.
So how are you managing that? Is it basically when you come in and you are wanting to be part of the program, how often are they engaging in parent education? Is it formal workshops, or do you come together, or is the learning within the classroom environment because they're in it too? Is it sort of like a co-op?
It's a little bit of both. So we only run the school 3 days a week. And for us, that was plenty. I really like the 4-day weekend, and it leaves 2 days for the kids to do other stuff that's interesting for them or just family time. So for the 3 days we run the program, there's a parent volunteer in there every day. So yes, they're getting experience in the classroom, listening to the language, seeing how the teachers are facilitating the children when they're having an experience, and just how we're holding that space. But then we also have more formal workshops. So it works out to be almost once a month where the parents are meeting for 2 hours, and I'm basically running them through Jen's program, but very surface level. One, because I'm an educator, I'm not in the therapeutic realm. And two, you don't want to overwhelm them because it is like you're just busted open to all this information. You're just like, oh my gosh, this makes total sense. But then how do we get there? You know? So the parent education is probably one of the favorite parts of my job so far. I mean, I obviously love being with the children, but when I'm with the parents and you just see this community start to open up and feel more safe and vulnerable and sharing stories and offering support. And the dads, I have so many dads in the program that are participating and they're asking questions and they're sharing stories. It feels like such an honor, because truly, whatever the parents put in and how far the parents go, I believe is how far the child will go, because the parents are setting the expectation for how everyone is going to move in their household. So when we do the more formal workshops, that's when the parents can really dive in deep and share sometimes some of the most vulnerable experiences that they have in their parenthood journey, and without judgment, right? Everyone is just there to, I hear you, I see you, where do we go from here? So they're getting it in the classroom and then also through the more formal workshops.
Okay, so I earlier I was referring to parents being in the classroom and having to work out, if their child was having a hard time. And I guess that was incorrect because they're actually not in the classroom. There's only one parent in the classroom during the classroom day. And when there are sort of disagreements that happen or something that happens amongst the children, you're there to sort of facilitate.
Myself and another teacher, and then parents have the option to stay. They can stay every day, all day, until the child and the parent is ready to have that separation. But yeah, typically in the beginning we had a lot of parents staying, but it will just be that one parent volunteer. But they are assisting with the students. They are definitely starting to feel more comfortable inserting themselves when needed, right? Because they've also learned to just observe and just ask, are you guys needing support? Are you guys enjoying this? Do you guys need some help with language? So they are there if and when needed.
Okay,
Is
fantastic.
it okay if I want to speak on that one question you asked about those who may be in their teens, right? Who have kind of moved through this. And as I'm sitting here, I have a 26-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old granddaughter. So anytime you'd like to explore a conversation with them, please do so.
Okay, so you raised your daughter utilizing these practices because you had already known all of this.
It's been an unfoldment, right? It all really began when she was 12. Like it really, like the shift really began when she was around 12. So she has been living all the bumps and the hiccups and the shift in language and what we call holding space. She's experienced it from the very beginning and to where we are today.
Exciting. I will definitely have to do that because I'm just curious. I think the big thing about parents is fear, right? And we have a fear based on something that we're unfamiliar with. even though what we're familiar with is absolutely broken.
Yeah.
Right? And it
Not
feels
working. Yeah.
uncomfortable, right? It feels uncomfortable to jump into the abyss, right? So it would be nice to be able to interview Brianna and see and have her sort of firsthand experience of having lived that experience, right? Because I mean, I'm sure there are also other kids out there who were given agency, right? Because homeschooling, unschooling is not new. People have been doing it for a long, long time. And also, I would love to talk about with somebody somehow about giving your child agency, even within, if you have them in a public school system, because for me, I sort of feel like if you're in a public school system already, your child is missing that agency because they're not given agency within the classroom. And they're also working along this fake scale of, grades in order to get to college, in order to blah, 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 right? And that's not giving you agency. So what does that look like for somebody who's had agency?
I mean, I don't know. I personally don't know individuals even that have been through the homeschool system or, that feel like they have agency. But yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah. So Kylie, what sort of transformations have you seen in practicing experiential facilitating within your program?
Definitely with the kids. I feel like you always see it in the kids first. It's the language. It's like, I need space. That doesn't feel safe. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling seen. And you have 4-year-olds talking like this. And that right there, when other parents come to tour, they're just like, what, what is that? What's going on? So definitely the language in kids, that's always the first shift is we try to equip them with different language that's expansive, that allows for conversation. But I will say what was interesting with this program, I wanted to start younger. When my daughter started in Jen's program, she had just turned 3. And there was such a sweet age, right? Because parents are only 3 years into the journey. It felt like a lot of time to course correct and start implementing new things. And I started my program at ages 4 to 7. And so even that felt like from September to January, we were getting rid of all that sharing is caring, but you're mean, but you're not. It was just so intense, and for kids who are used to feeling safe with a very polarized system of, okay, you're a good little girl. Okay, that's a bad little girl. They came here and it was almost too much autonomy. They didn't know what to do with it. Well, what do you mean sharing is not caring? But I want that. And if you're caring, then you share. So there was this whole reversal of, oh, but wait, there's so much more in between. So for sure, equipping the children with language and teaching the parents about the language and how it allows for so much more expansion in the conversation and figuring out the support and the solutions was definitely the first thing that I started noticing. And as the kids started to feel more safe, setting boundaries, expressing themselves, these conflicts that felt like they were happening all day where they did need intervention, they did need adults to step in and offer support. Suddenly it was like, okay, you just got to kind of stand back and then watch them figure it out. I need space. Well, I want to be in this space too. Well, this doesn't feel safe for me. And another little kid will come over and say, okay, well, can we do this? Can you go over here for a second? And she comes in and then we're just watching and sometimes not saying anything, and sometimes there is a blowout and we still don't say anything and then they're over it. They just had to discharge that energy and then they're done and everyone's going their own way. How quickly these children are able to repair and not hold grudges. I mean, I really learned holding grudges is a learned behavior. It's a victimizing learned behavior. And how quickly these children can just be over it, like, okay, had to discharge or we figured it out. Now let's go play. And then you can see the parents sometimes still really activated. Like,
Yeah.
we get to let go of it too. They had their experience. They feel safe. Now we get to let them move.
Yeah.
So I would say language for sure was the biggest transition that I witnessed, and then through the language, the actions and how it unfolded.
Can you share a little bit about the sharing is caring?
Yeah.
And how you get out of that, right? Like if somebody were to say, wait, well, what do you mean sharing isn't caring?
Yeah. So I always say within context, anytime I bring in a new toy that has lots of novelty and it's really fun, we're in the snow, like a snow toy, I introduce it as a share toy or a take turns toy, where we're going to take turns with it. So I set them up with the expectation that this doesn't belong to anyone. We're going to take turns with it. But even with that, if a child comes in, well, I want a turn now. Okay, well, let's ask so-and-so when they feel complete. And, sometimes there's some sneaky powers that come in. Oh, I'm not going to feel complete for a whole week. So that other child is just like, but I want it now. So it's just, I could see that. I can see you're really upset. Would you like to come play over here? And it's this beautiful, and I learned this from Jennifer, right? It's this beautiful unfoldment of the moment the other child is able to kind of back up a little bit. Then the child that has the item is like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. I'm done. You can have it. This like whole holding on and letting go. But I would say even that is not super common, for the most part when we're asking them, well, how much more time do you need until you feel complete? That's a question they almost rarely never get asked. And they're like, oh, I have a choice in this. I don't have to give it away when I'm not ready to give it away. They're like, 2 minutes. And so we're working with the other kid. Okay, do you want to count? Should we set a timer? Do you want to go play over here for a little bit? And then I can remind you when it's time. So again, all these other options that are available instead of no, give that away. You need to share. Because what I learned from Jennifer, and I've experienced it myself, I've experienced it with my daughter, is these kids have to learn how to say no before they can say yes. And when we're explaining this to the parents, I ask a simple question: how safe do you feel about setting boundaries? And it's always like, I don't feel safe and I don't set boundaries. How often are you saying I'm sorry when you don't mean it? How often are you saying thank you when you're not really thankful? So, this whole giving up our will and having to share to be a good kid, a good little girl, and accepted and have manners, that's not working for us, because as an adult, we can sit here in this room and all agree that it does not feel safe to set boundaries most of the time, especially in the friendship field, right? We might feel a little safer with our more intimate partners, with family or a spouse, but in the relationship field, in the social realm, I have not met someone that's like, yeah, I feel really confident advocating for myself, and there's no fear that I'm going to be abandoned or someone's going to talk about me after, or they're not going to think something about me. So even just giving that perspective shift, if it's not working for us now, so then that means there has to be a different way.
Right. Yeah, that's really helpful and really good it's so great that you're working with children and the adults.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. You can't just do the children, because the adults are going to be setting the tone for all of this. That's why I always say the children will go as far as the adults want to go. And I have a really amazing group that are very inquisitive, and there's a lot of willingness to lead into it, even if it doesn't fully make sense, which I think is totally normal. But they're showing up, they're asking questions, they're trying, they're coming back when they feel stuck. So the parents for sure are in the driver's seat with this kind of work.
And then do you encourage them to just sort of observe their children? If you're like, as a parent, if you're unfamiliar with the way to handle certain situations with your words.
Opposite. I encourage them to observe how it was for them growing up. I think so often we're putting the carriage in front of the horse. We want to do so good for our children. We want them to be better than what we were. We want life to be easier for them. But if the sole focus is just on the child, we're losing track, and I believe we're not really able to change the trajectory, because until we examine and really observe how it was for us, and when our needs were not met, and when we were not seen and not heard, when we get to acknowledge those parts and work on healing those parts, can we truly show up for our children and hold the space for them and really allow them to be who they are, without fear of being outcasted, abandoned, labeled a bad parent, and so forth. So it's backwards, when they're getting stuck, it's like, okay, now we get to go in. How is it like for you? What part of you still needs talking to, healing, holding? And when that process can happen, then can you now, learn how to do it differently for your child.
Yeah, show up differently and have a completely different perspective,
Right.
rather than wearing a hat.
Exactly. Because the hat will only take you so far.
Right. Right now, so Jennifer and Kylie, you both have, early childhood, pretty much programs going on. You also, actually, Jennifer has a teen program going on too. And I'm wondering if, Kylie, you have plans to, work with the same families throughout, because this program is all the way to young adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, so next year we're going to start our younger ones. And then my daughter will be out of the 4 to 7 range. So we're going to open up that. So I just take it year by year. But I personally love the adolescent years, the teenage years. I think that's such a beautiful time. And those poor kids just get dropped. And really, like, what happened in toddlerhood is just repeating now in teenagehood, right? So I'm very, very interested in that group, but I have no experience with this work in that group. So I've just kind of set myself up for each year. We'll just expand a little more. And as I'm growing in this field with this school and this work, it will happen. But yeah, I totally look forward to working with the teenagers, because it's one age group that I feel like is just like, okay, see you later. Figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. And Jennifer, do you do courses that are specific to working with adolescents?
No, I don't, because when it comes to, are you asking, Belinda, in reference to like teacher or facilitator training? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
yeah.
No, because again, we have to first understand the first developmental layers. If there's not a coming in with the foundational, and just to jump in to the teenage years, there's so much bypassing.
Mhm.
So, and that's like, with the program in Portland, we have, even though it's a small program, majority of the parents are taking the facilitator training.
Right. So if you take the facilitator trainer, I'm like, would there be a build upon
Yes.
that they could do to refresh and focus on adolescence?
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
that's, something that as we get more interest, because the teen program, the teen apprenticeship is a new program. And so as more interests come and more parents get involved, this is where we now get to evolve this layer, moving and supporting parents more in the teen realm. But again, it's going back to the beginning, you know, and all those unmet needs, or not being seen, not being heard, and why the behavior, or why yeah, it's just why the behavior is unfolding the way it is for the teen.
Yeah, so it's basically the experiential facilitator training, which is 7 months or whatever, like a year, right? That's the foundation. So everybody has to take that. And then on top of that, once you've taken that, then you can enroll into this adolescent specific training that might be however many months long.
Right, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people who are watching this probably should look into the experiential facilitator training, no matter what age or kid is, before they become teenagers. That way you can build upon.
Right, right. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, those were the 3 questions that I had to ask. Do
Mhm.
you two have anything that you wanted to add?
I think this is great. I think this is great. You're creating a platform where these conversations can be had.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to ask, when is the workshop that you're doing at Kylie's?
This Saturday.
This Saturday, the 24th. And it's
Yeah.
just one day.
It's just one day. It's 9 to 5, and this is all in the social realm. This is a workshop about friendships and boundaries, and how are we really showing up? How do we want to show up? And how do we show up for the difficult conversations? Again, because none of us, I'm assuming, had this space where we got to show up real when we were kids in the friendship. It was always just do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. And now we are so dysfunctional in the friendship realm, where it's really hard to have these conversations. It's fight or flight, most time flight, and even within the female realm, most time flight. Just, this is too hard, I'm moving on. So it's going to be a day of just exploring, and Jen can speak on this more, of just exploring how we are showing up now, and how we can show up more authentically.
And it's adding the next layer, the archetypal layer, right? It's really understanding how we play these archetypes, and how when we can really understand our archetypes and the light and the shadow parts, how sometimes we get stuck in those archetypes, especially in the shadow parts. And we've been playing this role, say the mother archetype, always nurturing, always doing, always taking care of, and how it serves a purpose, but there's a balance, right? There's a functional range of moving in the light and the shadow part. But because of society, the good girl, whatever it may be, we've taken on that role, and we don't know how to get out of the mothering role. And as soon as we start to realize, whoa, I have been in this archetype, I've been in the shadow part of it versus being in the light part, the dynamics in relationships and friendships shifts tremendously. And those around may not understand the archetype that you're trying to move out of, because it's time to move on into maybe the maiden, whatever. And then two, we have the deeper levels if we're looking through it from the developmental layers, from what you shared, Belinda, the first developmental layer, the second, the self-preservation on. We also have a element archetype. So like the first developmental layer is the earth element. And that in itself is an archetype, which represents the mother. I could go on and on and on. And this is something that we will really get into in the workshop this weekend, and reflection of sisterhood and friendship, and how technocracy and society and culture keeps our psyche fragmented in this realm. And how can we begin to pull these pieces back together into wholeness, to find that sense of self, to really come back into what we call divine sisterhood.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Belinda.
I look forward to talking to you guys again, and have fun at your workshop this weekend.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.